This is CBC Vancouver News.
My eldest brother, sister-in-law, nephew, his wife, and one-year-old baby are still under the rubble.
As rescuers scramble to reach survivors of the massive earthquake in Turkey and Syria, loved ones in BC wait and hope.
It's so hard to get up and down.
Many tenants in this building have been stuck in their rooms for months on end.
Fed up, Vancouver SRO residents demand their building elevator get repaired now.
We literally have experts working on this day and night.
What's causing the delays?
We hear concerns from people that they need more support.
This government is going to try and spend over $5 billion essentially in a 90-day period.
And provincial priorities. BC's throne speech outlines the government's spending plans from health to housing and beyond. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. It is a painful wait for many British Columbians with ties to Syria and Turkey. They're waiting to find out if loved ones have survived that massive earthquake that struck early this morning. More than 3,400 people have been killed, and as Briar Stewart reports, that death toll is expected to rise.
You can hear the power of that initial tremor. A magnitude 7.8 earthquake centered near the border between Turkey and Syria. It hit as people were sleeping, totally vulnerable. Then came the aftershocks, and hours later, a second major jolt. As building after building collapsed, people ran for their lives. In Malatya, Turkey, this one came down as rescuers were searching a nearby pile of rubble. A reporter there capturing the panic and fear on the faces of those fleeing. In the city of Diyarbakir, rescuers looked on as another came down. Thousands of buildings have fallen in Turkey alone. This man says he was in one, his wife trapped under him and unresponsive. He got out. Now he waits, trying not to lose hope. Rescuing her and countless others, the urgent mission. The search is made so difficult by piles of cement and debris. Cranes help where they can, dogs too. It's tedious, careful, desperate work. Bodies are uncovered, but so are survivors. Those brief moments of celebration, full of overwhelming relief. Searches like those are also happening across the border in Syria. Saw, hammers, bare hands, people doing what they can to move these mountains of debris. Here there's both government-held and opposition-held territory, already devastated by war and a refugee crisis. Now, new pain. This father is mourning his newborn killed in a collapse. Those who survived are being treated in overwhelmed hospitals. The opposition emergency organization, White Helmets, says aid is desperately needed.
Northwest Syria now, it's a disaster area. We need help from everyone to save our people.
Now, a day after that first quake, the scale of the destruction is becoming clear. Tens of thousands now homeless in both countries try and find warmth and safety where they can. The cold weather is making the conditions on the ground even more miserable for the rescue crews working through the night and for people seeking shelter. Many are staying at shopping centers and mosques, either because they don't have a home to go back to or they're too frightened to spend the night inside. The government has declared 7 days of national mourning in Turkey. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Istanbul.
Many British Columbians have family in that region. Yasmin Ghanea has more from a Vancouver woman whose loved ones was killed while others are trapped in the rubble.
It's been a painful day for many British Columbians watching and waiting.
This is probably the biggest tragedy my family has had.
Vancouver's Nural Sumbul Tepe's brother-in-law died in the earthquake. He was in Iskenderun, a Turkish city near the border with Syria. She says 5 of her family members, including her brother and her nephew's 1-year-old baby, are still trapped under the rubble after their apartment building collapsed.
And unfortunately, there's no rescue teams near them. There's power outages and cell phones are not charged.
Sumbul Tepe's family in Austria and Vienna are desperately trying to get to the region, but airports in Iskenderun have been severely damaged. She hopes rescue teams can get to the area by sea. Canada is among many countries offering to send help, but the details are still being worked out.
It just all depends on what the needs will be, and this is how we work together. Not just what Canada will provide, we'll be talking with our international partners as well and colleagues to look at what they will be providing support, and then this way we'll look at what we can provide.
Turkey's ambassador to Canada says what's needed most on the ground right now is search and rescue resources as well as emergency medical help. Turkey has deployed some 2,800 search and rescue teams as authorities fear the death toll will keep climbing. The Turkish-Canadian Society says people here can also help.
There will be, of course, need for equipments and material things, but also there will be need for money in the long run.
EDR says support will be needed for the months ahead as communities try to recover from the death and devastation. Yasmin Ghaneya, CBC News, Vancouver.
To other news now, Vancouver police are investigating a killing in Chinatown. Police said they were called to West Pender and Carroll Street shortly after midnight this morning and discovered a man dead. The victim has not yet been identified and no one has been arrested so far. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. A coroner's report looking into the death of a BC COVID denier and conspiracy theorist has found that he died from illicit drug use. Mac Parhar died in November 2021 at his home in New Westminster. He was 48. At the time, there were rumors he had died from COVID. The coroner's report says he did test positive for the disease at the time of his death, but that is not what killed him. Parhar had been in the news for spreading COVID falsehoods and running a yoga studio against public health orders. A warning, this next story contains some details people may find distressing. An actor who appeared in Dances with Wolves has now been charged with sex crimes in BC and Nevada. 46-year-old Nathan Chasinghorse appeared in a Las Vegas courtroom today. A criminal complaint says he's charged with 8 felonies, including sex trafficking and child abuse, among others. He's accused of abusing Indigenous women and girls for 2 decades in several states. And Mounties in BC say he is also charged with 1 count of sexual assault here. After a report was made to the RCMP in Karamias, he'll stay in jail until another hearing on Wednesday. People who live in a downtown Eastside SRO say they are fed up. Their elevator has been broken for months. The building does have ties to Vancouver Coastal Health, and many people who live there are disabled. As John Hernandez reports, crowds protested outside the building manager's office today, demanding those repairs get done immediately.
It feels like they don't really care about the tenants in the building much.
75-year-old Rick Pelagier has 2 bad discs in his back, and his ribs aren't much better. It takes him a half hour to make his way up the 8 flights of stairs to his room at the Portland Hotel.
I try not to go up and down too often. But usually I have to go to doctor's appointments and stuff like that. Maybe 3 times a day, so that's a killer.
The elevator has had problems for 8 months, and residents say it's rarely worked since September. Many here are disabled.
It's so hard to get up and down. I gotta wait for some staff member to show up at work, if they show up, to help me get up or get my wheelchair up.
Tenants who are disabled are dragging themselves down these stairs to be able to get outside, or they're stuck in their rooms. Many tenants in this building have been stuck in their rooms for months on end.
People that carry their legs with 1 leg up the stairs.
Dozens of them marched to the office doors of PHS Community Services Society, the nonprofit that runs the building, demanding it gets replaced.
These elevators have a lifespan of 20 to 25 years. This is known to everybody. We are at the end of this elevator's lifespan. This could have been dealt with in advance so that we don't have to be out in the streets.
This is not something we would ever sit on. We literally have experts working on this day and night as is.
PHS staff and the Ministry of Housing say repairs are on the way, but will take time.
We were projecting that the parts that were needed would be available for us by April because of supply chain issues that we had. We were able to get some parts much faster.
In the meantime, officials say people with significant mobility challenges have been offered alternative places to stay, a not so satisfying solution for these residents who will continue to make the daily climb. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
After plenty of community outcry, the society running the beleaguered Vancouver Folk Music Festival has paused its plan to vote on whether it should be dissolved.
We've also been in conversations with other partners and our funders, and we think that what has changed is we actually do see a way that we can translate this support into actual financial support.
The society has been under pressure with mounting money problems. The three-day event has long been a fixture in the city's arts and culture scene for almost half a century. The society's president says the board has had a change of heart after hearing from the public, partners, and other festivals. It's still unclear if they'll get enough cash to put on the event this year, but organizers are launching a fundraising and volunteer drive. Canada is expanding the criteria for Hong Kong residents to apply to work here through a temporary permit program to help address the labor shortage.
Reality is we cannot fill the needs of the economy with a domestic labor force, even if we put immense resources into training and do more to bring people into the economy who've historically been marginalized. We need to continue to recruit workers internationally if we're going to maximize our economic success and allow many businesses who've struggled over the course of the pandemic to continue to remain open by giving them access to the labor that they need so they can sustain not only the bottom line of those businesses, but protect the jobs of the people who work for those businesses today.
Under the new Hong Kong open work permit policy, people who have graduated from a post-secondary institution within the past 10 years can apply. Before, it was within the first 5. They can work in Canada for up to 3 years, and their partners and children can apply to study or work here as well. The application deadline has also been extended to February of 2025. BC advocates have long been pushing for more supports for Hong Kongers wanting to live and work in Canada. One of those advocates shared her story with our Zara Premji.
When I look back in some of the picture, I still want to go back, but I cannot.
Mabel Tung says speaking up against the political unrest in Hong Kong over the last few decades has meant she cannot return to her former home. But she's happy to see change has come in her lifetime that will help those looking to live and work here in Canada.
It's a win-win situation for both because Hong Kong needs a safe place to stay and Canadian needs the labor.
Tung says she wanted to speak on behalf of many Hong Kong students in BC because of the safety concerns they have for their families back home if they speak up about being happy with this announcement.
Hong Kong right now is completely upside down.
As far as next steps, advocates say they would like to see further allowances from the federal government for students and anyone else seeking safety and seeking a job or education here in British Columbia.
Hopefully they can extend more years until 2026. So that is our wish list.
And she says the advocating won't stop as they try to fight for more help like this from the Canadian government. Zara Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
The BC government has unveiled its priorities for the next several months in its throne speech today. Premier David Eby is away in Ottawa for healthcare talks with the premiers and the Prime Minister. But as Mira Baines tells us, the speech signals an urgency on healthcare, affordable housing, and public safety.
Tradition and ceremony kicked off the throne speech at the BC Legislature.
The future is bright here in BC, and your government shares people's sense of optimism about our endless potential.
There was an unusual twist with the province's premier away in Ottawa for a meeting with premiers and the Prime Minister. David Eby and his counterparts are negotiating a deal for more healthcare funding from the federal government.
For British Columbia, what we're looking for is a federal partner that's there for us on the core healthcare system, but we also are looking at expansions of the healthcare system, especially around mental health and addiction, around our home care, supporting seniors.
Of course, healthcare is just one of the government's priorities. Other highlights include, under the cost of living, new targeted measures to support people hardest hit by rising costs, including low-income earners and families with children. For housing, action against real estate speculators, increasing homes and services near transit hubs across BC. Under healthcare, strengthening access to public healthcare by investing in new hospitals and a new medical school, better substance treatment and recovery services, better cancer care to reduce wait times, and supporting internationally trained health professionals into BC clinics. Under public safety, getting violent offenders off the streets, and new laws to crack down on gangs, money laundering, and on malicious non-consensual sharing of intimate images. And under climate change, expanding low-cost clean energy solutions and a new job skills plan. And under equity, a new law on pay transparency, addressing equal work for women. And under reconciliation, an Indigenous rights-based partnership approach. David Eby's new cabinet has 18 months until the next scheduled election to make headway.
We hear concerns from people that they need more supports. They've made it clear that they want to ensure that healthcare should be available when they need it, their communities should be safer, they need affordable housing.
The opposition BC Liberals have their own plans.
We're also going to start laying out our vision for the future of British Columbia.
Opposition leader Kevin Falcon criticized the government for not spending on mental health and addictions treatment services and predicts the government's current plans for the surplus will not end well.
This government is going to try and spend over $5 billion essentially in a 90-day period and have it all spent by March 31st. I would argue that's very irresponsible. You can see that by the announcements they've made that have no detail.
The BC Greens say there needs to be a data-centered approach to measuring the effectiveness of the government's policies.
There's really a lot of announcements, a lot of saying we're going to put money here and put money there, but no indication of how do we know if this is successful.
The province's budget will be tabled later this month. There will be scrutiny around how the government balances an upcoming economic slowdown with its ambitious plans going forward. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
How will Vancouver Coastal Health spend an almost $3 million grant from the city for mental health support? That story's next. And hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Thanks for being here. Do you have an interest in collecting movie memorabilia from productions done here in Canada? A cocaine-smuggling bear and objects from a zombie apocalypse are just a few of the items gracing the shelves of a Calgary warehouse that's saving movie magic from ye old landfill.
This fella will be famous on the 15th of January. Hi, my name is Ian McAteer and I'm one of the owners here at Adanac Liquidation. We partner with 3 production companies here in Alberta, and we are asked to go in at the end of a TV show or a movie set and acquire the contents of that show. We either bring it to auction or bring it back here to our store in Okotoks and sell it to the public. So this is our first ever movie prop that we got here in Adanac. So we call him Freddy the Friendly Bear, but his name in real life is Pablo Escobar. We can inflate and deflate his lungs. So on the TV show, they tranquilized him. He was caught smuggling cocaine across the border into the United States. Until we're asked to go into a TV show, we don't actually know what we're going to have. So it could be a wardrobe sale, it could be a vehicle sale, it could be all of the props that were used in home scenes. You never really know. These mortuary buckets, they were used in a mortuary scene for a couple of dead people in another TV show that we did. It's a bit of a crapshoot for us as to what we get or what we're asked to clear. But again, that's half of the fun and half of the enjoyment from our point of view. You know, what will we get our hands on next? So this fella here is a prop that we picked up just before Christmas. The TV show that he's involved in will be aired in January this year. I'm not trying to hide the name of the show, but we have signed a deal where we don't mention the TV show until it's on air. We got into it back in BC. About 3 years ago, we got a call from a production house in BC to ask whether we knew anyone doing a similar service in Alberta. And then COVID happened and we took a chance and we came here. And in June 2021, We did our first production here in Alberta. We never go to landfill with anything, so that's one of the niches that we have with the production houses that we have. Each show is different, each crew is different, but we make sure that everything that is used in a production finds a home. The trick then for us is to find that home as quick as we can. 2023, we expect to be an extremely busy year, as 2022 was. There are about 6 or 7 productions here at the moment in Alberta that are in storage, potentially to be called back for a further season or shows. Not all of those will get the green light to go ahead for another season, so we're expected to be quite busy from the tail end of January onwards for 2023.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you.
See you in January.
Please, yeah, absolutely.
We're getting a better idea of how Vancouver Coastal Health would spend a mental health grant from the city. Mayor Ken Sim has proposed $2.8 million to beef up support for those who are struggling. As Joel Ballard reports, most of it will be spent on creating a non-police involved mental health response team.
The multi-million-dollar grant would be the first installment of what Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim hopes will become an annual grant, aimed at bolstering the city's frontline mental health and public safety response, and it will be split between 4 different initiatives. The CAR 8788 program, which pairs Vancouver police officers with a registered nurse or psychiatric nurse. The Assertive Outreach Team, they work with adults who recently suffered a mental health crisis and help connect them with community services. A new non-police program, where a team of mental health workers respond to someone whose mental health is deteriorating and helps de-escalate the situation. And finally, strengthening Indigenous mental health support.
At the end of the day, what we have is a health crisis and a mental health crisis on our hands, and so we need to respond with health services.
So here's exactly how the $2.8 million would be spent. The police and Vancouver Coastal Health Partnership programs will hire 14 new full-time employees. That's split between the CAR 8788 program and the Assertive Outreach Team. The new non-police de-escalation team will receive the crux of the funding, hiring 32 new staff, and the Indigenous programming will hire 12 new employees. In the past, there has been a lot of criticism around whether police officers are suited to respond to mental health emergencies, especially considering the fatal outcomes of past calls. Something Dominato says the new plan takes into account.
I think we're trying to be responsive to what we've heard from the public, is that we need a continuum of response services. And so in this instance, there are some areas and incidents where we don't need to have police, and what we need is someone who is very skilled in de-escalation and talking that person down and getting them connected to health services.
Now, none of this has been approved yet. It goes before council on February 14th. And if it gets the green light, hiring will begin in the spring and continue through the end of the year. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
There's a live shot of downtown Vancouver, Harbour Centre facing the North Shore. The fire hose is on. Plenty of rain for the South Coast and beyond. Johanna will have your BC-wide weather forecast right after this.
Good evening. It struck in the hours before dawn as the people of Turkey slept. An earthquake lasting just 45 seconds, but they were seconds of unbelievable terror and destruction. The quake was centered in the country's northwest, near Izmit. Experts say it had a magnitude of 7.8, rumbling just 10 kilometers below the surface. Hundreds of aftershocks followed, and in the aftermath, the numbers are staggering. At least 2,000 people dead, 11,000 injured, as many as 10,000 more still missing. Tonight, the search for survivors goes on in Turkey, as does the search for food, water, and shelter. CBC's Don Murray is there.
The brutality of this blow, this massive trembling of the earth, created havoc, created panic. We were all asleep when it struck, this woman says. It was terrible. We were running in a panic. It was like coming face to face with death. Seen from the air, whole neighborhoods lay flattened as if battered by a giant fist. In other areas, seemingly spared by a whim of fate, some buildings still stood while their neighbors were reduced to rubble. 4 spans of a bridge of a major highway collapsed, crushing a bus in their destructive vice. A major oil refinery was set on fire by the earthquake and burned throughout the day. In the capital Ankara, a residential building still stood, its flank ripped open, leaving an ugly concrete wound. The devastation touched many cities in Turkey, and in almost all there were scenes of drama as rescuers struggled in the ruins to find the living and pull them out. For some survivors, the magnitude of the tragedy seemed too much to accept. Everyone died, he said. Everyone is dead. No one is alive. Oh my God. Throughout the day, the country mobilized. Soldiers and civilians joined the rescue teams. Stadiums became temporary shelters for the injured and for those in shock. And in cities around the country, people lined up to give blood. Tonight, rescue efforts continued to try to find and save thousands trapped in the rubble where last night they slept. And tonight, tens of thousands of others who escaped will not be returning to their homes. They have taken refuge outside, still fearing the danger of aftershocks and of buildings possibly fatally weakened by the assault from the earth itself. Don Murray, CBC News, Istanbul.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back. Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
The fire hose is on across our province, and meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here to tell us where it's going, what it's doing.
Yes, yeah, it's a fire hose, but it's like, you know what, there's multiple settings. This is like the flat spray rather than the jet.
You can just hear the click now, right?
The click, yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
It's still enough for...
It's not a mister.
It's not a mister, no.
But it's not a soaker.
Exactly. Still rainfall warnings, but it's a middle clicker, and that means we're just really seeing the heavy rain in through northern sections of Metro Vancouver. The entire city is, or the entire metro area, not under the warning. It's 50 to 70 millimeters for the Tri-Cities, North Shore and up towards Howe Sound. But the moisture is crossing over and bringing some big snow to the interior up towards the northeast. The Peace, 10 centimeters more, and you've also got big winds kicking in overnight tonight. And the Kootenay Pass looking at 20 to 30 centimeters through to tomorrow afternoon. So here it is, the medium spray atmospheric river that is tapping into some subtropical moisture, and that means we do have another half day of the heavy rain. So we're not quite through. No, earlier this evening we had a bit of a break and then a fresh round of steady rain coming in overnight tonight, lasting through the first half of your Tuesday. So just taking you through the system, heavy rain through most of your Tuesday for the south coast. We are seeing snow around 1,200 meters and higher, so our locals getting some snow at the top, as well as the Rockies getting some fresh moisture. We get a bit of a break for Wednesday before the next system moves in for Thursday and Friday. This time last week, on Monday, I think I was saying we've got 100 millimeters to go for the week ahead. This time we've got 75 millimeters for the week ahead. Yeah, we're coming down slowly. Wednesday will really be our break day. Oh, I forgot to mention, behind that system tomorrow, we may see a glimpse of the sun as it moves through mid-afternoon. Also, chance of a thunderstorm there. But, you know, we're going to have to take it day by day. A few more systems to get through. It's mild, but I've only got 2 sunny icons in there, so
We know you're
There you
working
go.
on it. It's
I'm
okay.
working on it.
It's out of your hands. Thanks.
You're welcome.
That's your late news for Monday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news anytime, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. Have a good night.